Mr. Bear woke up craving honey, his favorite morning treat. The sun was just peeking through the trees, casting golden rays across his cozy den. He could already imagine the sweet, sticky taste on his tongue, and his stomach rumbled in anticipation. He shuffled to the cupboard, reached for his beloved honey pot, and lifted the lid, only to find it completely empty. The sight made his heart sink. He turned the pot upside down, hoping for a miracle, but not a single drop fell out. He scraped the bottom, but not a drop remained. Not even a smear of golden honey clung to the sides. It was as if the pot had never held any at all. His mood soured instantly. The day felt ruined. The disappointment weighed heavily on him, and he slumped down, feeling sorry for himself. With a frustrated sigh, he slammed the pot down and decided there was only one thing to do. He couldn't let his day be ruined by an empty honey pot. He'd have to venture into the forest to find fresh honey himself. There was no other choice if he wanted to satisfy his craving. Grabbing his foraging bag, he set out, determined and single-minded. He knew the journey wouldn't be easy, but he was ready for the challenge. The cheerful forest seemed to mock his foul mood as he marched beneath the trees. Birds chirped and sunlight danced on the leaves, but Mr. Bear barely noticed. He scanned the high branches, knowing the bees guarded their treasure well. He would have to be clever and careful if he wanted to succeed. Today, nothing would stop him from getting his honey. With a deep breath, he pressed on, ready to face whatever the forest had in store. After a long and hungry search through the dense, sun-dappled forest, a sweet, irresistible scent finally led Mr. Bear to a magnificent beehive hanging from the sturdy branch of an old oak tree. The golden hive glistened in the sunlight, promising a delicious reward for his efforts. His mouth watered as he imagined the thick, sticky honey inside, picturing himself feasting on the treat he'd been craving all day. The thought of the honey's sweetness made his stomach rumble even louder. Eagerly, he reached up, ready to claim his prize, when suddenly a tiny but determined guard bee zipped out from the hive and blocked his path, hovering right in front of his nose. "Stop right there, Mr. Bear!" she buzzed in a surprisingly bold voice. "This honey belongs to our colony. We worked hard to make it. Please leave us in peace and let us enjoy the fruits of our labor." Mr. Bear scoffed at the tiny bee's warning, baring his teeth. "I'm hungry and I will have my honey. Move aside, little pest. You can't stop me." The bee hovered bravely, refusing to back down. "We worked hard for this honey, day after day, gathering nectar from every flower. If you asked politely or offered a trade, we might share. But you can't just take it because you're bigger." Mr. Bear's temper flared. He ignored her warning, his pride wounded by the tiny bee's courage. He was determined to get what he wanted no matter what. The bee's courage was remarkable, standing her ground against a creature so much larger. But Mr. Bear was in no mood for lessons about fairness or respect. He reached for the hive again, convinced that his size and strength gave him the right to take whatever he pleased, ignoring the pleas of the tiny defender. The forest seemed to hold its breath, every creature watching in tense silence. Trouble was brewing, and everyone sensed that something important was about to happen. Mr. Bear roared, dismissing the bee's plea. He thrust his paw toward the hive, but the guard bee darted forward and stung his nose, sharp and fiery. "Ew!" he howled, swatting at his face. The pain was shocking, but the insult to his pride stung even more. Rage overtook him. He grabbed a heavy stick from the ground. Forgetting his hunger, he was now set on revenge. He swung the stick, eyes blazing, ready to destroy the hive. All thoughts of honey vanished, replaced by anger. The bee retreated, but Mr. Bear was blinded by fury. He was about to make a terrible mistake. With a furious roar, Mr. Bear smashed the hive with his stick. Honeycomb and golden honey rained down, but his triumph was brief. A deafening roar erupted as thousands of bees poured from the shattered hive, the air filled with a black, swirling cloud of angry insects. Mr. Bear's victory turned to terror as the swarm descended. He dropped the stick and tried to run, but the bees were everywhere, stinging his arms, legs, and especially his nose. The pain was overwhelming, 1,000 fiery needles at once. He yelped and bolted through the forest, desperate to escape. All thoughts of honey and revenge vanished. The bees taught him a lesson he'd never forget. He ran for his life, battered and humbled. Mr. Bear stumbled into his cottage, his face swollen and his body aching from the countless bee stings. He looked utterly miserable, his fur ruffled and his pride wounded even more than his skin. Mrs. Bear took one look at him and let out a long, knowing sigh. Without a word, she fetched a jar of soothing ointment and began gently tending to his wounds, her touch both caring and a little exasperated. As she dabbed ointment on his welts, she shook her head in disbelief. "All this trouble, and for what?" she murmured, her voice a mix of concern and disappointment. Mr. Bear could only look away, ashamed. With a sigh, Mrs. Bear walked over to the cupboard. She reached inside and pulled out a full, glistening pot of honey that Mr. Bear had completely missed in his impatience. I bought this yesterday as a surprise for you," she said, placing it gently on the table. "If only you'd taken a moment to look or simply asked me, you would have found it waiting for you." Mr. Bear stared at the honey, his heart sinking as he realized how his anger and impatience had blinded him to what was right in front of him all along. He saw the mess he'd made, the pain he'd caused himself, and understood that all his frustration had been for nothing. The honey was there, just waiting to be found. Sitting quietly, Mr. Bear reflected on his actions. He learned a hard lesson that day. Think before you act, and don't let your temper cloud your judgment, or you may end up creating your own troubles. The sweet reward he longed for had always been within reach, closer than he realized, if only he'd paused to notice. Sometimes patience and a calm mind are the greatest treasures of all, leading us to happiness we might otherwise overlook.